Eve's Diary, a book written by Mark Twain. Based on the title, I'm going to assume this book is about a diary Eve wrote, but probably not in the style of something like Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Twain wrote it as a comedy where he imagines what Eve might have put in her diary in Eden, if she had one. Originally, Twain published this as a short story in 1905 in the magazine Harper's Bazaar. The story must have been pretty popular because Twain republished it in 1906 as a standalone book through Harper & Brothers, the parent company of Harper's Bazaar. Twain got Lester Ralph to illustrate each of Eve's diary entries. The entries are mostly of Eve and Adam in Eden, so some of the images of the book depict Eve and Adam, naturally while in Eden. This got the book banned in some places at that time. Can you imagine? You're Mark Twain and people are accusing you of publishing something too risque for the populace. Okay, so let's talk about the book. It starts out on the day after Eve is born, or at least the day after she thinks she was born. Her problem is she can't be certain. She thinks it's possible she may have forgotten a day or two, and so she decides to start a diary so that there's no chance that she will forget any more days before yesterday. In this same first diary entry, she writes that she feels like she's in an experiment. She thinks she's the main part of the experiment, but she thinks everything around her is also part of this experiment. She wonders that though she is the supreme part of the experiment, that's the word supreme is my word, not hers, or Twain's. She wonders, does she have to stay vigilant to stay there? Is Twain giving us some foreshadowing here? Do you think we'll find out what happens if she isn't vigilant? Eve is young. She's only a day old, so of course she's young. Because she's young, she doesn't really understand perspective, so she thinks she can reach up and grab the stars in the sky. She says, "You would be surprised to find how far off they are, for they do not look it. When they first showed last night, I tried to knock some down with a pole, but it didn't reach, which astonished me." Eventually, though, she figures out that they just look close, and they're not really. In one of her diary entries, she tells us she walked around trying to find a location where she could get closer to the stars. Eventually, it got too late for her to walk back, so she looked for a place to settle down for the night. She came across some tigers and nestled in with them. Tigers apparently sleep on strawberries, so they smell like strawberries. Tigers are beautiful, from a distance. How great would it be, though, if they actually smelled like strawberries? Although, maybe that would be a bad thing, too. Eve says about tigers, "I have never seen a tiger before, but I know them in a minute by their stripes." When Eve sees an animal or an object for the first time, she names it. She believes that she just knows what they are the moment she lays eyes on them. She never imagines that she might actually be making up these names right then and there. The moon gives Eve great pleasure. It disappeared and she was greatly stressed by it. She wrote, "The moon got lost last night and slid down and fell out of the scheme. A very great loss. It breaks my heart to think of it. There isn't another thing among the ornaments and decorations that is comparable to it for beauty and finish. It should have been fastened better. If we could only get it back again." Is this a mystery? Should we start a list of mysteries that Twain needs to solve before the end of the book? One mystery is, does Eve have to be vigilant to stay part of the experiment? And now, does the moon have to return? She wonders if somebody stole it. She admits she likes the moon so much that she couldn't be sure she wouldn't steal somebody else's moon if she found it. Now, I know what you're thinking. Where is Adam in all of this? Eventually, Eve comes to Adam. At first, she isn't sure what he is. She thinks he could be a man or he could be a reptile. Ultimately, she decides to consider him a man, until something happens to give her a different opinion. At first, every time she tries to come near Adam, he would run up a tree and stay there until she leaves. Well, I don't know, maybe then he is a reptile. Every time I come near a skink or other kind of little lizards, they scurry away from me. Oh, the moon returned. Eve wrote, "They returned the moon last night." Wait, who's they? Anyway, and I was so happy. I think it is very honest of them. It slid down and fell off again. Oh, goodness gracious, somebody really needs to fix that. But I was not distressed. There is no need to worry when one has that kind of neighbors. They will fetch it back. One mystery solved. Maybe we should add to the list of mysteries, who are these neighbors? Eventually, Adam stops hiding from Eve. She follows him around, constantly talking to him. But he doesn't talk to her nearly as much as she talks to him. Hey, is Twain stereotyping men and women? They walk around Eden, and Eve announces the names of everything they see. Eve names everything. She thinks that Adam is happy that she announces the names before he has a chance to. She decides that he isn't good at naming things, so she does it for him. She wrote, "The minute I set eyes on an animal, I know what it is. I don't have to reflect a moment. The right name comes out instantly, just as if it were an inspiration. So no doubt it is, for I am sure it wasn't in me half a minute before. I seem to know just by the shape of the creature and the way it acts what animal it is. When the dodo came along, he thought it was a wild cat. I saw it in his eyes, but I saved him. And I was careful not to do it in a way that could hurt his pride. I just spoke up in a quite natural way of pleasing surprise, and not as if I was dreaming of conveying information, and said, 'Well, I do declare, if there isn't the dodo.'" Suddenly the next day, Adam avoids Eve. She doesn't know why, but it hurts her feelings. I think I might know why. He might have been a tad irritated with her. After 3 days, he stops avoiding her. When he started interacting with her again, she offers him an apple. Eve wrote in her diary, "I tried to get him some of those apples, but I cannot learn to throw straight." Another stereotype, maybe? "I failed, but I think the good intention pleased him. They are forbidden, and he says I shall come to harm. But so I come to harm through pleasing him. Why shall I care for that harm?" Eve decides that since Adam doesn't talk much, it must be because he is not bright. In spite of her belief that he is not smart, she doesn't care. She loves him, and that makes her rich, and without love, intellect is poverty. Occasionally, Adam would use a word that impressed Eve. She was confused where that word came from because she didn't use it. After all, she is the experiment. Eve starts to feel a little lonely. Even though Adam is interacting with her, he doesn't take an interest in her as she expects him to, so this makes her lonely. So she goes to the pool, where there's a girl in the water. This girl that makes her feel good about herself. This girl in the water feels sad when she feels sad, and that comforts her. She writes, "It is a good friend to me, and my only one. It is my sister." Sometimes the girl in the water isn't there, at night or when the weather's not good. But Eve waits for her, because she knows the girl may be on a journey somewhere, but will be back soon. One day, she decides to stay away from Adam, hoping this would make him miss her, but it didn't. While avoiding Adam, she started playing with sticks and accidentally started a fire. She thought it was a sprite and ran away from it. When she looked back and saw the sprite didn't follow her, she went back for it, but the sprite was gone. In its place, she found some pink dust where the sprite was. She put her finger in the dust and discovered it was hot. Then she determined that the sprite was something she called fire. She really liked fire and the dust it created, especially the dust it created. She was proud of herself for creating something new.
Yeah! Yes! Look what I have created! I have made fire! I have made fire!
So she created more fires and more dust. She wanted to take some of the dust back to her place and keep it, as a little decoration or just so she had it for her fun. Next thing she knew, she had a big fire going. Adam came and put the fire out and then left. Geez, she can't even interest him with fire. Eve wrote, "Fire is beautiful. Someday it will be useful, I think." Oh, she loved fire until she burned too many things and then she started to fear it. I don't blame her. Fire for food is good. Fire for fun is bad. At this point in the story, Twain feels it important that we know something about Adam's thinking of Eve. So he gives us an excerpt of Adam's diary. Adam talks about Eve in his diary, much more than Eve talks about Adam in hers. Although what we have of his is a fraction of what we have of hers, so maybe if we had his entire diary and compared them, maybe it would be about the same. In his diary, he recognizes that she likes to talk a lot. He says she's delighted by everything. She has to name everything she sees, pet it, and caress it. He tells us this about her. If there is anything on the planet that she is not interested in, it is not on my list. There are animals that I am indifferent to, but it is not so with her. She has no discrimination. She takes to all of them. She thinks they are all treasures. Every new one is welcome. He notes that all of the animals follow Eve around like they are her pets. Adam tells us about the first time they encountered a dinosaur. I guess dinosaurs were still new and fascinating in 1905, where Twain felt compelled to put them in Eve's diary. Adam wrote, "When the mighty brontosaurus came striding into camp, she regarded it as an acquisition. I considered it a calamity. That is a good sample of the lack of harmony that prevails in our views of things. She wanted to domesticate it."
Bye now. Try not to be too long. Come on, Dopey.
"I wanted to make it a present of the homestead and move out. She believed it could be tamed by kind treatment and would be a good pet."
Let's see if we can find some nice grapes for dessert. Strawberries would have been nice, but you ate them all up again.
Okay, that's all Twain wanted us to learn from Adam's diary. Back to Eve's diary, we learn that she is feeling like she is educated now. She thinks she was ignorant at first, and that bothered her. But now she's conducted enough experiments on how things work that she's quite sure she's educated. Eve writes, "By watching, I know that the stars are not going to last. I have seen some of the best ones melt and run down the sky. Since one can melt, they can all melt. Since they can all melt the same night." One of her experiments was to figure out how water flows. She's talked about this pool, and this pool always has water, even though there's a waterfall attached to the pool. So in her mind, the water in the pool should fall out at some point, and the pool should be empty. After a number of experiments to try to figure out why the pool never runs out of water, she determines that the water runs uphill at night to refill the pool. And she figures out that it only runs uphill at night because she never sees it run uphill. During the day, it's always running downhill. So to keep the pool full, it must be running uphill at night. In other experiments, Eve writes that she figures out that wood swims, and dry leaves and feathers and plenty of other things. So from here, she surmises that rocks must also float, though she can't prove it. For this one, she just has to accept that it must be true. Eve's diary continues on after the fall. So the other mystery about whether she needs to stay vigilant is solved. She writes, "When I look back, the garden is a dream to me. It was beautiful, surpassingly beautiful, enchantingly beautiful. And now it is lost, and I shall not see it any more." Since their garden is lost, you would expect her diary to be a little sad. However, Twain has Eve stay happy and optimistic. "The garden is lost, but I have found him, and am content." Eve goes on to write that she loves Adam. She spends several pages explaining all the things about Adam that she knows is not the reason she loves him. She can't really articulate the reasons why she loves him, just that she does. Then we skip 40 years ahead. I don't know if Twain couldn't come up with anything else to write, or nothing of interest happens in the intervening 40 years. It must be the former, because the latter is definitely not true. Near the end of the diary, Eve is thinking about her death. She hopes she dies first because she can't imagine life without Adam. She also thinks he won't miss her as much as she will miss him. She does die first, but in her death, Adam makes very clear how he felt about her. At her grave, he said, "Wherever she was, there was Eden."